This video is what we YouTubers back in the day used to call a Pwnage video. A Pwnage video is when you find someone on the internet who says something ignorant or stupid or inaccurate and you make a video responding to the points in their video. Now, this guy doesn't claim to know what he's talking about, and I'm using this as kind of an educational tool for those people who are interested in the subject of Shakespeare. Now, I poke fun at this guy, which I know is bad, and it kind of makes me look like the bad guy, especially since he said this at the end of his video.
If you're into that medieval time shit, then whatever, that's your opinion. I personally don't like his shit, so you should respect my opinion, I respect yours.
And I felt bad for wanting to tear him a new one, but then I remembered that at the beginning of his video, he said this.
I had to do a rant on this fucking faggot.
And after hearing that word, my sympathy went away, and I'm gonna tear him a new one. Let's do it.
William Shakespeare, I had to do a rant on this fucking faggot, you know? His stories are so boring. They're not interesting. They're boring as fuck.
I'm interested in the fact that you're calling them stories when he mostly wrote plays and poetry. Now, you could argue that, yes, the plays are stories, but most of those stories weren't his. The storylines were not actually original to Shakespeare. It was the presentation and the words that was the original part. Most of them were based on fairy tales or legends or just popular stories at the time.
Why do stupid teachers, schools make us read Shakespeare? His stories are over 400 or 500 years old and shit.
On the making of your video, Shakespeare's birthday was 450 years ago, so about 400, a little over 400 years ago, were when his plays were written.
Why are you making us read shit that's 500-600 years old and shit?
Yeah, man, why you gotta learn about, the past and shit, history and shit? Why you gotta learn about that shit? That shit's already done, man. We don't fucking... Fuck that shit. Shit.
It's old! You know, and the language and shit. It's not just boring, but it's the language. I mean, yeah, it's English, but it's not modern English like the ones that we speak now.
That is correct. The term you're looking for is Middle English.
It's English, but they mix up some of the sentences. They make no sense at all and shit. In this scene, it says, "Thou shall I be not betrayed, but should be rewarded." What does this mean? What do you think this means?
That, sir, means nothing, because that was gibberish.
You know, what the hell? Why is the language so different, you know?
We already went over this. It's Middle English, from 400 years ago. That's why it's different.
Why make us read? Another reason you should not make us read this shit is because the language is different. We don't understand the language in this damn story.
We know that you don't understand the language in these plays. That's why you're in school. Learning about them.
These stories, Shakespeare's stories, are all fucking medieval time shit, and they're so stupid and boring.
When you say medieval, most people think of the 1200s to the 1400s. That's traditionally what we think of when we think of medieval, even though it does go outside that perimeter. But Shakespeare was born in 1564, which is well after the medieval time. What you're thinking of is the Elizabethan era or the Renaissance era. You know, the era of Assassin's Creed 2, except in England and not in Italy? Yeah, that time period.
Everybody in my class, my literature class, they actually seem to find these Shakespeare stories interesting. I don't know how. Everybody. When we're done reading a scene or whatever, the teacher always pauses the audience. She's like, "Okay, what happened in this scene?" Everybody's answering the questions. They're giving a good description of what actually happened, and I'm the only one who does not know what happened. I'm just sitting there, all bored, half asleep.
Wouldn't that make you think just for a second that not understanding these stories is maybe your fault? I mean, I don't want to point fingers here, but if everybody else is understanding it and you're not, I don't think you can blame Shakespeare for that. I think that one's on you, buddy.
Waiting for the fucking time to pass, hoping time could just fucking hurry up so I could go to my next fucking class, which is my lunch period, so I could talk to my friends.
Hopefully about Shakespeare.
No, because it's medieval time shit. Medieval times. I don't want to read about medieval time shit. That shit doesn't interest me. It's boring. boring. When something doesn't interest me, I have a hard time paying attention to something that does not interest me or that's boring.
Now that's actually a fair point. I'm going to diverge from shooting you down for just a second here to address that. If you're not enthusiastic about something, it's really hard to learn about it. If something is not interesting, you don't retain information about it. I understand that, and I will say that some of the fault that you not liking Shakespeare, that fault, some of it goes on the teacher, because the way that Shakespeare is taught in schools nowadays, I hate it. It's boring, and I understand people's hate for Shakespeare when it comes to that. And partially, I have to give some of the blame to you for not giving him a chance. I mean, a lot of people don't like Shakespeare because they think that he's very frilly and ultra-sophisticated and lovey and flowery, and yeah, some of that's in there, but Shakespeare wrote about, you know, sex and war and sex and revenge and sex and treachery and sex and evil and sex and dark themes and sex and racism and sex. Notice how he wrote a lot about sex, right? That's kind of a big thing with Shakespeare. Like, a lot of people think that Shakespeare is not dirty. Oh my god. If school board members and teachers actually read a lot of what Shakespeare wrote, I don't think they'd be teaching him in schools. But the man is pretty raunchy. Think of the 1500s version of Seth MacFarlane. That's basically a good depiction of what Shakespeare was. Actually, a lot of the people that went to go see his shows, and the people that enjoyed his shows a lot, were people that were called groundlings. The reason they were called that was because they didn't have enough money to pay for a real ticket, so they paid a penny for a ticket, and they got to stand at the foot of the stage in like this big mosh pit all rubbing up against each other, and they were poor and uneducated and simple, and they loved Shakespeare because of all the violence and all the sex that was in his plays. It appealed to them. He wrote for the common man. I mean, whenever I listen to a poem by Shakespeare being read on YouTube, it's always someone with a British accent, and they write it, love is not love, which alters when an alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Like, Jesus Christ, be more boring, please. But that aside, as somebody who knows and loves Shakespeare, I am extending my hand to you. Go look into Shakespeare, read some of his stuff, read his poetry, watch his plays. There is something in Shakespeare for literally everyone, and trust me, you will love him when you know what he's about.
This is the reason why I always get low grades in these literature classes, because every year we always read these stupid Shakespeare stories, these medieval time shit. Why do we read medieval time shit? Stupid. There's not all there are fucking kings, queens, knights, Roman soldiers, sword fights, battles. I don't know that shit.
According to this guy, back in medieval times, all there were kings, queens, sword fights, and battles. Like that was it. Like, if you were to go back in time, like get in the fucking DeLorean from Back to the Future and get out of Hill Valley and go to England and go back to the medieval times, that's all there would be there. There would just be fucking kings, queens, battles, and sword fights just in an abyss of nothing.
I don't want to read that shit. It's boring. Why can't we read shit like fucking hockey stuff? I want to read fucking hockey books, or, you know, a book like this. A hockey book. You know, I don't want to read no fucking Shakespeare stories.
I'm going to kind of use this moment to complain a bit about student attitude towards education. Now, when I was a freshman in high school, we had to read a book called Catcher in the Rye. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have read that. I hated that book. From cover to cover, it was stupid, it was boring, I hated it. It didn't do anything, it didn't say anything, but I read it. And I paid attention to it because I think that literature is important. Whether it's good by your standards or bad by your standards, it is important. If you have ever read a book, fiction or nonfiction, if you have ever read a book and enjoyed it, you have people like Shakespeare and Dickens to thank for that. They had a massive impact on the literary world, and if you have ever read anything that was good, that you liked, that you walked away thinking, I'm really glad that I read that, you have these people to thank. And all these literary giants throughout history, these are people that are important and need to be immortalized, and schools are helping with that. You become a lot more well-rounded. You don't want people being of one mind and one set and only knowing how to do what it is that they need to do for their job. You need people to be well-rounded, to be well-versed, and Shakespeare and Dickens and things that have stood the test of time and survived this long are worthy of that. It helps us understand better who we are as people in the context of our own lives, in the context of society. What are these feelings? It shows that people back then are the same as people right now, and that is something that we do not want to blow to the wind. I'm sorry, that wasn't very funny. Move on to something else that he says that's stupid.
Boring. I don't care about medieval times. I've been to medieval times before.
You've been to medieval times before? Do you know some shit I don't? Just what?
And it's boring, you know? It's so boring. I went there from my cousin Ryan's 10th birthday or whatever the hell.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have just heard something so stupid that the fundamentals of my very character are broken. They're just broken. I am no longer the man that I was. The man that grew up and lived 21 years of life is dead now. What you see before you is a shadow of the man I once was. I am incomplete. I have been intellectually destroyed. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Medieval Times is a restaurant. That is the name of a restaurant. And this man seems to think that going to that restaurant and being in that restaurant gives him the knowledge of and the experience of being in that time period. That, let's remind ourselves, is not even the time period that Shakespeare was alive. I have no joke for this. I can only move on and hope that everybody else sees the ridiculousness of this statement as much as I do. Next clip.
And the language, like I said, it's so gibberish. It's the sentences, they make no sense. Like, I'm on the site, I'm gonna try to... There's actually quotation marks of some of the fucking quotes of these Shakespeare stories. I'm gonna try to find some stupid ones that make absolutely no sense.
Before hearing what these quotes are, I can almost promise you that they all make sense.
A little more than kin and less than kind. What the hell does that mean?
Okay, let's break that one down. A little more than kin, but less than kind. Do you know what kin means? Kin means a relative, a brother, someone you have blood with. So, a little more than kin, so more than kin, but less than kind. You know what less than kind means? It means mean, right? Like not very kind. You know what kind means? It means gentle and nice, right? So, a little more than relative, a little more than kin, a little more than, you know what that means, right? A little more than kin, but less than kind. Someone who is a little more than family and less than kind. Did that help?
You know, the teacher always expects us, I don't know if I mentioned this, but she expects us to know this. Nobody knows it. Nobody knows this shit.
I do.
Brevity is the soul of wit. What the hell does that mean?
The word you're looking for is brevity. Brevity is the soul of wit, meaning conciseness and shortness of time and the quickness. Quickness, that's what brevity means. Is the soul of wit, is the key of wit, is important to wit. Being concise is important to being witty. Do you know what witty means? Witty means being clever, being smart, being quick on your feet. Brevity is the soul of wit. To be concise is important to being witty. Simple as that.
King Richard III, Romeo and Juliet, fucking, it's the only good one, but it wasn't the best, but it was the only interesting Shakespeare story.
Romeo and Juliet is your favorite? That's weird, because that's actually not one of my favorites. It's actually pretty low on the list. I mean, not as low as like King John or something, but yeah, it's pretty low on the list. The rest suck. I obviously take objection to that. Have you read any of them, or are you just speaking out of hate because you don't like the one that you're reading in school currently?
I saw a couple more stupid ones. I'm trying to find them. I will speak daggers to her, but use none. What? What the fuck does that mean? That doesn't make sense.
It actually makes perfect sense. Let me break it down for you. I will speak, okay? Meaning I will speak, meaning I will say something. I will use language from my mouth. Okay, you know what that means. I will speak daggers. What does that mean? What do daggers do? They harm, right? Like you use them to hurt someone, to usually kill, but you use them to cut someone, to make them feel pain, right? To cause harm. I will speak harm, but use none. I will speak daggers, but use none. I'm going to speak daggers. I'm not going to use real daggers, but I'm going to speak harm, but not actually harm. I will speak daggers, but use none. Any more?
Macbeth, the one we're reading now. Fair is foul and foul is fair. Don't know that one.
Fair is foul and foul is fair. Why do I need to explain this one? There are literally 4 words that are used in that entire sentence. Fair is foul and foul is fair. We use all 4 of those today. Foul, right? What is foul is considered fair, and what is fair is considered foul. Are you, do you speak English?
Yes, do I fear thy nature. The. They use thy, T-H-Y. It means the.
Thy means you, or your, or yours. Thy does not mean the. I am thy servant. It does not mean I am the servant. It means I am your servant. Thy will is my command means your will is not my command, not the will is my command. Thy meaning the doesn't even make sense in the majority of thy's uses. It clearly means yours. It does not.
T-H-E. Why can't you just use the? Why you gotta use thy?
Because it's not what it means.
You know what the hell? Yet do I fear thy nature. Yet do I feel the nature. That's what it should really say.
Yet do I fear your nature. Not the nature, your specific nature, not all fucking nature.
It is too full, oh, the milk of human kindness. It is too full of the milk? I believe that's what you mean. Why didn't you put an F?
Have you ever been asked the time and you responded, oh yeah, it's 2 o'clock? You know how that's spelled, right? It's 2-O apostrophe clock. Or 4-O apostrophe clock. It's O apostrophe clock. O clock. Same thing there. You've ever sung the Star Spangled Banner. Oh, say, can you see? It's still a thing we use in language today. Oh is actually still a thing that's used all the time today. It's not some weird Middle English thing. That's a thing that... This one's inexcusable. This is something that you should know. You are in a literature... You are in a country where education is something that you are gifted with education in this country. You really should know that O is something that is in our language by the time you hit high school.
You know what I mean? All these is language. They mix words around, like, instead of saying, I have to take a huge dump in the toilet bowl, I have the toilet bowl, put my ass in, drop a load of turd in it, you know what I'm trying to mean. That was a bad example, but
I can actually explain why Shakespeare does that. When Shakespeare is writing in his poetry and in his early plays, less in his later years, he was writing to fit a meter. You're going to hear your teacher in high school say all the time, iambic pentameter. Iambic pentameter this, iambic pentameter that. What does that mean? Iambic pentameter, pentameter just means 5 feet. What a foot means is 2 syllables. So if you have a line of 5 feet, 2 syllables long, that means you're going to have a 10-syllable long line. Iambic means that the even number syllable, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, that has the stress. Now, stress is a big thing in poetry. So let's take the first line of his most famous sonnet, Sonnet 116, let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Okay? Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Okay? If you were going to say that traditionally, just the way that you would normally say it, you would say, let me not admit impediments to the marriage of true minds. But that doesn't fit that meter. That doesn't fit within iambic pentameter. So he would switch the words around, so it did. So, let me not admit impediments to the marriage of true minds still means the same thing when you say it, let me not to the marriage of true minds impediments, and it still works. You still understand what it means, and it fits the poetry meter. That's the reason why he does that. And people understood it back then, they understand it now, which is why Shakespeare is still popular, still widespread, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, someone somewhere is performing Shakespeare. That is why people still understand it.
Teachers and shit, they make us read, like I said, these stupid plays, and the teacher always assigns us characters and shit. Like we have to read to the whole class and shit. Like there's, in these Shakespeare stories, there's also these, these plays you have to, like it says Caesar, then Jimmy, then Don. One person, she picks a person in the class to read John's part. I have to play Caesar's part, and somebody else has to do that other person I said's part, and we have to read it to the whole class. I don't want to do that. I don't like reading to the whole class.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to get up in front of the class. Yeah, that's the only time I'm going to make fun of you. But teachers, there is a point to be had here. If there are any teachers watching this, which I'm pretty sure there aren't, this is not the best way to show people Shakespeare's language. If you have a kid up there who has no idea what he's doing, who doesn't want to be up there, they're not going to understand what they're saying when he's up there reading Hamlet going, oh, what a piece of work is a man, how noble in reason, how infinite in faculty, in form and moving, how something and admirable, in action, how like an angel. Like that doesn't make any sense. They're not going to get that. You need someone who understands what they're saying. Play a recording, show them a clip, and explain it. Because when it's delivered like that, it doesn't make any sense. It's delivered better. It makes a little more sense. Like, oh, what a piece of work is a man. How noble in reason, how infinite in faculty, in form and moving, how express and admirable, in action, how like an angel, in apprehension, how like a god, the beauty of the world, a paragon of animals. And yet to me, what's this? Quintessence of dust. Man delights not me. Now, my bad acting aside, that should have helped you understand what I'm saying a little more, because I'm saying it with purpose, and I'm saying it with meaning. When you have somebody reading it up there cold and has no idea what they're saying, it's not going to come through, and you're going to get kids like this who don't like Shakespeare because of that.
Usually after we're done reading these stupid plays and shit, we always have a test, which I always fail the damn test and shit, because I don't know what the hell it's about. And then we end up watching the movie, and the movie's boring as well. I'm just like sleeping.
That's actually fair. It depends on what movie you're watching. If you're watching the Leonardo DiCaprio version of Romeo and Juliet, ugh.
I hate Shakespeare. I fucking hate Shakespeare. It was entertainment back then. It's not entertaining anymore.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 400 years, someone is performing Shakespeare somewhere in the world with people watching. It's still entertaining today. Maybe not to you. I don't like watching football, but I'm not going to say it's not entertaining, because obviously I'm wrong. Shakespeare is still entertaining. And like I said before, there's something in Shakespeare for everybody. You just have to know where to look and be willing to look. If you give me a list of the types of stories and video games and movies and books that you like, I can point you in the direction of a Shakespeare play that you are going to fucking love. Because what you love about whatever it is you just told me about is in a Shakespeare play somewhere. And most likely it's in several.
I get Shakespeare stories were entertainment, were the best or whatever. The best stories. He wrote like the best plays. Back then, it was the best. It was interesting. Everybody loved that back then. It was entertaining back then.
Actually, Shakespeare was not the best back in his day. Well, I mean, he was the best writer, but they didn't recognize him back then. They thought that the people who were writing plays beside him were better. Other playwrights that were working for other companies or the same company. Because Shakespeare never went to the Renaissance version of college, which I think was called college, or I don't know what it was called back then. I'm sorry, I don't know everything. But he never went there. He never got any higher education, and so scholars would laugh at him for writing plays because he had no business writing plays. He's an uneducated. How dare he shake his spear? That's actually something that was written about him, because Renaissance humor from scholars is really, really boring, and that's why he survived and they didn't.
You know what what Shakespeare's goal was? His goal, to me, 500 years ago when he was alive, he wanted to make boring stories boring on purpose to fucking torture kids in class and have them fail.
No, I'm pretty sure that 400 years ago when he was writing his plays, he was thinking, I'm gonna get paid for this. So yeah, I've basically gotten everything that I can get out of this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys don't like Shakespeare, or if you didn't know a lot about Shakespeare, I hope that this helped you, see the light, so to speak, or demystified him a bit. Really, this man is something that should be celebrated, and I'm happy that I can share this with you guys, and I feel bad because a lot of people are like this guy in this video that I'm, shooting down. A lot of people don't like Shakespeare, and I think it's just because they weren't taught properly. If I didn't grow up in the family that I grew up in, I would probably hate Shakespeare because my exposure would have been through high school, and you don't want that. So if you want to talk to me, leave a comment down below. I'm pretty much small enough where I respond to every comment that I get. So I will see you guys next week, and I'm sorry about the infrequency in videos. It's just a big deal with my computer and my camera, and it's just a lot of stuff is bad. But thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next episode of Let's Play, or if my computer hates me again, I'll just see you next week for the next vlog. Mwah! Bye.